नमस्कार के साथ बात पर बात का ये पहला एडिशन है। अनौपचारिक बात भी है, लेकिन साथ ही साथ कुछ गंभीर मुद्दों पर चर्चा करना आवश्यक जब हमें लगता है घर बैठ के चाय पीते हुए या टेलीविजन देखते हुए। तो एक महत्वपूर्ण विषय जिससे कि पूरे विश्व की व्यवस्था में कुछ आमूल-चूल परिवर्तन आता दिखाई दे रहा है। बात गंभीर है और गंभीरता से इस पर चिंतन मेरे साथ करने के लिए डॉक्टर राकेश शर्मा जी जुड़ रहे हैं। डॉक्टर साहब, आपका स्वागत है। नमस्ते।
नमस्कार।
तो ये श्रृंखला की शुरुआत इस तरह हुई है कि कई बार खबरें धड़ाधड़ इस तरह आ रही होती हैं कि हम चाहते भी हैं उसके बारे में जानें, समझें। इस दिशा में आपने ये समय निकाला बात करने के लिए। यूक्रेन पर रशिया का आक्रमण। पहले अधिकतर लोग सोच रहे थे कि ऐसा होगा नहीं। हालाँकि 200,000 सो इतने अधिक अगर आर्म्ड फोर्सेस के लोगों को जमा कर दिया रशिया ने यूक्रेन के बॉर्डर पर, तो जैसे कि अमेरिका कह रहा था कि ये हो सकता है। और तो एक बार बहुत ब्रीफली जब आपने ये सुना कि रशिया ने यूक्रेन पर अटैक कर दिया है, तो क्या चीज़ आपके दिमाग में आई पहली-पहली?
जी देखिए, इसमें हिंदी में बोलूँ या मिक्स करके बोलूँ?
मिक्स कर सकते हैं। वी कैन गो इन इंग्लिश आल्सो, यस।
Sure, sure. So, as we all know, Russia has been eyeing Ukraine for the last few years. And in 2014, they took over Crimea, which used to be part of Russia, actually. So, when Crimea was taken back by Russia, Western powers were quite upset, angry, but Russia did not budge. And for the last year or so, Russia has been giving enough indication that it's not happy with Ukraine and is going to take some kind of forceful military action against Ukraine. And they have been building their forces on the border of Ukraine, Ukraine being neighbor of Russia. So, although they were in their own country, but we all understand that when you have 200,000 soldiers at the border of your neighbor, you must have some intentions that you might invade that country. And Russia has been giving the hint. And we all know that President Biden last week told the US public that within few days Russia will invade Ukraine. We all thought, living in US, that Russia perhaps is going to put some pressure on Ukraine so that Ukraine and Western powers negotiate with Russia and give Russia some concessions. But to our surprise, Russia did invade Ukraine on 24th of February, and they went with all the force from land, air, as well as sea.
So,
So it
Dr.
was a big
No, yeah,
surprise, but kind of understood.
yeah. So just slightly backtrack to the moment when we were listening to President Biden, and also he was expressing full support of America as well as NATO forces to Ukraine. I think Ukraine president took that seriously. I wouldn't say that the declaration of support was not sincere, but the kind of world that we have started living in, everybody is intertwined in terms of their interest and needs, call that economic needs or the needs of the consumers of different countries. So Russia being what it is, even the financial restrictions are not full to choke the proper functioning of Russia. And Russia is the supplier of oil, major supplier, so that affects the situation in all the countries. Now, coming back to the kind of support which Ukraine was expecting from Russia and NATO forces in case of this situation where Ukraine finds itself now. Uh, do you think there is a mismatch in terms of Ukraine's expectations or anticipation of the support from the rest of the world uh, in this step taken by Russia against Ukraine?
Absolutely. I think Ukraine did not play its cards well. And the reason I say that is when you have a very strong neighbor, you just don't want to be enemies with that strong neighbor and expect someone else who is thousands of miles away to come to your help. Even if they want to help, that help is not going to be sufficient enough because Russia has roughly 700,000 troops and Ukraine has 200 or 250. So there's no match. And Russia is the second most powerful nation in the world. Some people may say China is as powerful, and it's quite possible. But Ukraine has no match to Russia, and hoping that the United States or other Western countries will come to its help to fight Russia is hoping for too much. US can help Ukraine with some defense equipment or money, but US is not going to send 100,000 forces to Ukraine to fight Russia. And that's the problem. Ukraine miscalculated the kind of help that West was promising to give it. And I think Ukraine needs to understand that you really cannot depend on other countries when there's a major war.
Okay, so here's the thing: as a citizen of whichever country you are, leadership plays an important role in terms of determining the destiny of the nation. So, President Zelensky, the way he interpreted the support and the kind of stand that he has taken, has brought the country to brink of the war, or is it the overture or aggressive stand of Russia that has brought this situation, or the kind of lobbying in support of Ukraine, which was heard, has made it happen? We will have to take into account all the factors together. Now, looking at India's role in this situation, and as you are aware, in the Security Council, UN Security Council, Russia vetoed. So the 11 to 1. Now, this veto thing is kind of makes the whole efforts that are possible by United Nations, as you see sometimes when you are on computer, they say this is disabled. So then United Nations can play no role if the aggressor is the one who is in a position to veto. Naturally, is going to veto whether it is China or Russia or if it is in some case America or whatever. So I don't know why was this provision of veto there in the Security Council in the first place. So, but leaving that part aside, coming towards India in this scheme of things, and India has played its card in a way that it didn't openly criticize Russia. We have heard that there has been a conversation between Russian President Putin and Prime Minister Narendra Modi. What exactly were the details? We don't know. What I came to know through newspapers is that Prime Minister has urged him to not escalate violence. That is a generic statement anybody would tell anybody. डॉक्टर साहब थोड़ा ध्यान रखना है ऐसा मत करिए. Whether I tell you in phone it may change your mind or not, I don't know. But at the same time, India also expressed that it is concerned about people who are stuck of Indian origin in Ukraine. तो यहाँ से मैं ये बात जोड़ता हूँ कि कुछ क्रिटिसाइज भी हुआ जो लोग यूक्रेन में अटके हुए स्टूडेंट्स वगैरह हैं. हालांकि इंडियन गवर्नमेंट ने पहले कह दिया था कि अब आप बाहर आ जाओ, तब तक युद्ध शुरू नहीं हुआ था. बट पीपल डिडंट गो. उनको जैसे हम लोग सोच रहे थे कि नहीं होगा, वो भी सोच रहे थे कि नहीं होगा, एंड दे गॉट स्टक. सो मैंने जहाँ से बात शुरू की थी, तो कुछ लोग इंडियन गवर्नमेंट को क्रिटिसाइज कर रहे हैं कि हमको वहाँ पे फंसा दिया. So then again, there are counter arguments कि भाई you have to use your judgment. So that, but overall, I come to you with your take on India's stand in this situation, and I'll also take the liberty once again of referring to President Biden responding to a reporter saying that वो इंडिया के टच में है and Western forces are urging India कि वो एक stand ले, of course, against Russia. So overall, your take on India's position?
See, United Nations Security Council resolution to condemn Russia for invading Ukraine, and India abstained from that voting. And India's UN Secretary Tirumurti justified the abstaining of India by saying that enough time was not given to Russia so that it could clear this whole mess in a diplomatic way. So Russia had no choice but to take this kind of military action. And to be very truthful, I mean, I don't want any country to invade its neighbor. Uh, at the same time, India has a long-standing friendship with Russia or ex-USSR. So India just cannot abandon its ally of the last 60, 70 years. Yes, India is also very friendly with United States, and we all live in US, so we all want India to be closer to US, but at the same time, India has seen that over and over. Russia has always been has been on the side of India. So India just cannot condemn Russia, and so the best policy for India is to stay abstain from this kind of voting. And as far as veto power is concerned, as we all know, 5 permanent members have veto power. So any of them can do any wrong thing or mischief and then veto it. And that's the best game these five big countries play all the time. United States does the same thing, and China does the same thing. So it's not a surprise that Russia has veto power, and it's going to use it to its advantage. As far as India is concerned, I think they need to stay away from limelight at this point because this is a dispute between two nations. And believe it or not, after some time, they will be okay.
So, ये जो लास्ट में आपने बात कही है, आई थिंक दैट इज वेयर और होप लाइज दैट आफ्टर सम टाइम थिंग्स विल बी ओके. लेकिन बहुत सारी चीजें ऐसी होंगी जो वापस ठीक से बनेंगी नहीं, बिकॉज एज यू नो, व्हेन देयर इज अटैक एंड पीपल लूज देयर लाइव्स, तो वो एक ऐसी बात है जो वापस हो नहीं पाती. और पहले दिन खबरें आई थी 137 पीपल डाइड और किल्ड रादर, पर आगे क्या हो पता नहीं है. बहुत सारी बातें मालूम नहीं पड़ती. और ये भी खबरें थी दैट यूक्रेन ऑन इट्स ओन वाज ब्लास्टिंग इट्स ब्रिजेस ऑन बिटवीन द स्ट्रीट्स, ताकि जो ग्राउंड पर फोर्सेस एंटर हो गए हैं वो टाइमली नहीं पहुंच सके. बट देन सम डिफेंस एक्सपर्ट्स वर सेइंग दैट द टेक्नोलॉजी हैज एडवांस सो मच that within 35 minutes to an hour they can build a
Build the
sort
bridge.
of alternative bridge on which these what tanks can sort of pass. Overall situation is very very dangerous, and yet when you look from outside, and as for us these are images, we don't feel the pain as much as people who are there are feeling. They are recruiting normal citizens into the army, and you must give credit to whatever kind of leadership President Zelensky is offering. The people who love their nation are lining up, and they are given arms. But now, I mean, if you have not learned the art of using a fire power, and there is airstrike, it's going to make no significant impact, is what my take. So I don't want to sound pessimistic from the side of Ukraine, but Ukraine seems to have no chance if America and allied forces are only restricting their support up to financial restrictions. So what do you see is sustaining the kind of stand which President Zelensky is showing at this moment? And I'll quickly add that there are uh, conversations about potential dialogue to take place between Ukraine and Russia. President Putin has also said that he is willing to send his high level delegation to Belarus for the possible conversation. do you see? Okay, so here's here's one more thing I'm just reminded, which is the ultimate aim for this invasion from Russia's point of view seems to be, as declared by Putin, that they want to demilitarize Ukraine. And there were also references that if the President Zelensky uh, is thrown by Ukraine army, then Russia is okay. Now, this puts Ukraine and its sovereignty with a big question mark. So, is that the intent? It doesn't want Ukraine with any military power, and where that leads to this region as well as the world order.
Uh, I think your viewers need to know the truth. It has nothing to do with whether Ukraine should be democratic country or dictatorship or puppet of USSR. Russia. The issue here is Russia doesn't want Ukraine to be a member of NATO. And as we all understand, NATO was started after World War II in 1949 so that European countries, especially the Western European countries, could be saved from aggressive USSR. That was the purpose of NATO. So USSR is gone, NATO is still here, and what NATO has done is in the last 20 years after USSR has been broken into different countries, NATO has expanded its membership from 16 to 30, and most of the countries that have joined NATO now used to be part of USSR. So what Russia wants is that Ukraine should be spared. Ukraine, being its neighbor or largest neighbor, should not be included in NATO. And that's what the fight is all about. And if Western powers agree to that verbally or in writing, I think this whole war will be over. And that's what Russia wants. And I can understand Russian point of view because in 1962, when Khrushchev sent missiles to Cuba, President Kennedy was going to attack the missiles before they were installed in Cuba because USA didn't want USSR missiles in the backyard of US. Same way, Russia does not want NATO country in its backyard or in Ukraine. That's what the fight is all about. Ukraine is better off not to be a part of NATO, not for the time being, and maybe in future when global powers are little more friendlier and Russia is more friendlier, they can definitely do that. But at this time, Ukraine, part of NATO, is going to incite Russia, and that's what the whole war is about.
So let's try and understand from you why so much fuss about Ukraine becoming a part of NATO. How does it affect Russia directly, and does it appears as additional threat to Putin if Ukraine joins NATO?
There are two, three things. Number one, NATO is an organization that if any member of NATO is attacked, all the other NATO members will come to its rescue and will fight on its behalf. So Ukraine has a large border with Russia. Russia does not want any Western forces in Ukraine at all. So that is what the problem is, and I can understand. But of course, this is geopolitics. It has nothing to do with right and wrong. We all may believe that as a nation we have a right to join hands with any organization, but politics is a little different, and morality is not in politics what it should be. And so Ukraine just is better off not to join NATO, and Russia doesn't want NATO forces next to its border.
So now let us look at the implications of this situation for the world order. And America already seems to be perceived not as a superpower, and the kind of response which we heard from President Biden also doesn't add to the overall clout of America, in terms of if you are allied with America and you have a sort of a big brother with you. In Afghanistan, also, we have seen the way American forces were pulled out. It didn't leave a very good image of India. Now, Ukraine seems to be continuing in that direction, though America is not as on the ground yet, with statements and overall support to Ukraine. Your take on implications of this situation?
Yeah, two things I would say. Uh, Number one, which may not sound very good, there has been a talk among people who are very academic that how could Ukraine ever think that NATO countries will fight for Ukraine against Russia when NATO countries could not even fight Taliban? As you all remember, that 20 years of fighting in Afghanistan was just wastage of time and money. And in the end, NATO countries did not even fight Taliban. They left everything, and Taliban is in charge of Afghanistan. And that's why we actually went there initially. So if you can't fight Taliban, which is nothing but a bunch of hoodlums, how can you really fight Russia, which is an organized country? And Ukraine just did not think about that. And Russia knows it very well that Western countries do not have appetite to fight another war, and Russia is taking advantage of that. That's number one. Number two, Western countries, since they cannot fight Russia, they can only impose economic sanctions. And yes, these things work sometimes, not all the time. We have seen that with Iran. I mean, Iran is surviving, it's doing whatever it was doing before or after the sanctions. Russia, being a little smarter than Iran, has already accumulated more than $600 billion. They have been planning this invasion for some time. So they knew very well that Western countries will impose sanctions against Russia. So they have a lot of cash on their hand. They can really sit tight with all these sanctions for a year or two and won't care. At the same time, I think Russia also has a kind of a friendship with China, and Russia will be able to sell its oil as well as gas to China, if not to Western powers. So Russia will not face too much of sanctions, what West has been thinking.
So you are right. China initially kept silent, but later on it came in support of Russia. So they becoming ally against the rest of the world. Some countries aside, he is not. He's going to put Russia not in a condition where it would break due to these financial restrictions. I get that, and allow me to mention the late night message of President Zelensky to Ukrainians, where he made three important points. One, this night is going to be crucial. He also criticized Russia for having attacked kindergarten, so they're making Russia looks like even more big villain to have attacked kids. And that's what American media and rest of the world will be talking, I think, now for a few days. But the third thing which he said is this is make or break for Ukraine, which is very significant. No, how can he save Ukraine if there is no military might left? They again, as you said earlier, having pragmatism and talking about ideals sometimes are two different things. If you want to sometimes look at the practical solution of moving towards peace, uh, I don't know whether Ukraine has a big chance of overpowering Russia. I must say they don't have big chance. So soon, maybe things may change. But then again, Russia is not welcomed in Ukraine. So, in that context, I will bring to your attention the statement made by Russia that they are not going to stay there. They are not going to be like invaders who occupy the land. They just want to demilitarize, and probably uh, they'll be happy if they have a puppet government ruling Ukraine on behalf of Russia. Still, things are going to be difficult on the ground level in Ukraine. But we will conclude by looking at the implications on the world, and I'll request you to touch again the position that India has already taken, and how you think, is there going to be some action by America and allied forces for taking side? Let's say not India is more or less, by being neutral, has taken side with Russia. So will they go out to kind of penalize India? Because this is the kind of statement that you heard from President Biden, that if anybody is supporting, तो जो अपने बहुत बोलचाल में कहते हैं दुश्मन का दुश्मन दोस्त होता है, या जो भी है, दुश्मन का दोस्त हो गया तो हमारा दुश्मन हो गया, these kind of things, when they come to play in the international level, तो it is a very interesting and kind of a difficult time suddenly that we are thrust into.
Yes, of course. If India doesn't come on the side of Western powers and shows a little bit more friendship with Russia, President Biden will not be having champagne glass with Prime Minister Modi. I can understand that. They will be a little bit annoyed with India for a month or two, but USA is in no position to punish India. That's number one. And I would add one more thing, that United States policymakers are absolutely wrong not to take side of Ukraine, but by becoming more against Russia and pushing Russia into a corner, they are actually helping China. China and Russia will become more friendlier countries, and they both combined are going to be a bigger force. And USA policymakers don't realize that you don't want to push two big powers together into one box, where tomorrow you end up fighting with those both. Not fighting means a war, but in economic way. So Russia and China getting closer is bad news for not only for US, but for Europeans as well as for India too. India doesn't want to see China more powerful, but US policymakers are pushing Russia into China's lap, where China will get more technology or defense technology from Russia. They will be able to build more defense, offensive or defensive weapons, and USA and other peace-loving countries are going to lose. This is a bad policy on the part of US to push Russia closer to China.
And as we are almost near concluding part of our conversation, I recollect uh, President Imran Khan, Pakistani leader, landed in Russia to have a meeting with Putin. So he traveled all this long journey. He got down, and he wasn't received by his counterparts or any high level ministers, even. But as he was walking out, we saw some videos on social media saying, he was saying, "I'm so excited, what a time to be here." And I don't know whether the statement that he was making, he was aware that now Ukraine is being attacked by Russia. So if he makes that statement with this backdrop, it puts even him in a more ridiculous kind of situation. It's not like they are celebrating Diwali, but maybe he wanted to have, I don't know what kind of hopes he had. So your take on this briefly.
Yeah, President Imran Khan, or Prime Minister Imran Khan, he actually ends up in every nation where there is some kind of trouble. If you remember a few years ago, when Saudi Arabian prince was being criticized for the death of Saudi Arabian journalist, Imran Khan was the only world leader who went to Saudi Arabia to shake hand with the crown prince. And a few weeks ago, Imran Khan was the only one who went to China during a Winter Olympics, and now he's the only one who has gone to Moscow. It looks like Imran Khan is looking for those nations that are in trouble, go and shake hands with them because no other person wants to go be there, and then ask for some money. or some kind of loan. So that has been his mantra, and it
So,
doesn't even work properly.
yeah, so I will just mention one more news, or rather, I was watching one Pakistani channel. They mentioned that Imran Khan proposed he wants to have a television debate with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He wants to improve relations with India, and he wants to have this kind of debate. So the analysts in Pakistan were mentioning that this is very non-serious kind of a suggestion that can come from leader of any nation. Now, if he wants to make a point, or he wants to prove that he's more intelligent than Prime Minister Modi, and so overall, one, it is not going to happen. It's a very absurd idea. But then when you want to show off that, oh, look who I am, probably you come up with these kind of not very mature ideas, is what I would say. But
No, I have a suggestion for Imran Khan. He wants to have a debate. We will definitely send Rahul Gandhi.
I think on that note, we'll leave, and we kind of being what we are, peace lovers. I'm talking on behalf of all the world citizens now. In the new world order, we would like to see that we reach quickly to the equilibrium where forces are aligned in a fashion that they don't end up hurting or attacking or killing, and made this always human life is precious, and that respect on all levels needs to be observed. So, any concluding remark from you, sir?
Yes. So I hope all the world leaders get together and is some diplomatic solution to the problem between Russia and Ukraine. And so that this bloodshed and innocent lives are spared. And we all know war is never an answer to any problem, and India being a peace-loving country, and all of us who were born in India and live in US, we all pray that this war ends soon, because as an Indian, and now of course as an Indian American, we never believed in war, and we still don't believe in war. So I think diplomatic solution is the only answer.
Absolutely. So I appreciate Dr. Rakesh Sharma ji for joining. और ये हैरम्बा स्टूडियो यूट्यूब चैनल पर जो बात पर बात सीरीज शुरू की है, इसका मुख्य उद्देश्य यही है कि कई बार जो कुछ घटित हो रहा है उसको हम आपस में बात करके समझें, और उसमें एक और होलसम पर्सपेक्टिव की तरफ मिलजुल कर बढ़ने की कोशिश करें। तो आप के बारे में मैं ये कहते हुए कि आप भारतीय संस्कृति, इतिहास और विश्व के इतिहास के साथ में अपने मेन प्रोफेशन के अलावा इतना डीप इंटरेस्ट रखते हैं, वो हमारे लिए आपको विशेष सम्मान का पात्र भी बना देता है। और आपके लिए भी बहुत सारी मंगल कामनाएं और आभार व्यक्त करना चाहता हूँ।
Thank you very much.
So, thanking Dr. Rakesh Sharma for joining us, and once again praying for those whom we have lost. And we once again look forward to a peaceful world, as well as better understanding to prevail among leaders everywhere. So, thank you very much for being a part of this conversation. और इस तरह की बातचीत हम समय समय पर लाते रहेंगे। तो आप यूट्यूब हमारा चैनल जो है इसको भी सब्सक्राइब करें, और लाइक करने के लिए भी आग्रह करने वाला एक एक परंपरा है यूट्यूब चैनल के सिलसिले में, तो वो भी करते हुए थैंक यू।